Okay, we're all ready to go. So thanks again, everyone, for attending the class preview tonight. Let me just start by just kind of introducing myself. My name's Craig Fear, and I'm a certified nutritional therapist. And I've been helping people with their digestive issues for about 5.5 years now. I live here in Western Massachusetts, and my practice is Pioneer Valley Nutritional Therapy. And I help people privately in my office here and a little bit online over the phone. And so my story, let's tell you my story real quick. I developed some pretty bad digestive issues when I was in my late 20s, early 30s. I'm 39 now. And I was just kind of one of those typical folks who just thought, I was doing all the right things and eating healthy, and I was eating organic and shopping at Whole Foods, and just thought I was doing all the right things and eating lots of fruits, vegetables, grains, and doing all these kind of these typical things people do that they think they need to be healthy. And I just developed a lot of kind of chronic bloating and a lot of intestinal pain, and I just felt really fatigued. I wasn't digesting my food well, and I just knew something was wrong. And I went to doctors, and I had, endoscopy and colonoscopy and blood tests, and everything came back fine. And, they tell me they think I was crazy and I was depressed or something. And I knew something was wrong. And even though all these tests were coming back negative. So anyway, I found this perspective on foods now that I help people with, which I call the traditional foods diet, traditional foods perspective. And it made a dramatic difference in my health. And over the course of the next few months, my digestive issues kind of just vanished. And in the process, I became a certified nutritional therapist. And now I help people with what I kind of went through and show them how easy it can be to really kind of work through some of these issues that are becoming so commonplace today. I don't know if you can hear, there's a cat here in the background that is just whining to go out, so I'm really sorry. I have to let him out because he's just sitting at my feet whining. Hold on 1 minute. Apologize. I'll be right back. Okay, Ricky, come here. Sorry about that. So where was I? So yes, I was talking about my digestive issues, and so that's why one of the reasons I created this program is because I've been helping people through this. I've helped myself through it, and I just wanted to reach more people through this online medium, and I've been teaching some live classes here in the Pioneer Valley, Western Massachusetts, and I just felt it was time to kind of put this online and help people, because so many people just need help with their digestion, and there's just so many simple things you can do, and no one knows. Doctors really don't help people with their diet. They just kind of, it's a lot of just they come in and give them a few drugs, which helps manage the symptoms, but doesn't really kind of help the underlying issue, and people have to stay dependent on these drugs. So and another reason I created the program is that there's a lot of great digestive protocols out there, and I've used some of them. Some of you might be familiar with the GAPS diet. Great healing diet around traditional foods. I'm going to use a lot of the concepts, a lot of the principles of that diet in my class, but it's a brutally difficult diet. I mean, you have to make all your own food. Everything has to be homemade, and I've seen a lot of people just kind of crash and burn on those diets where it's just too much, too soon. They get overwhelmed. And I've kind of adapted a lot from those diets, and I just have a lighter approach, basically. And I've learned that you can make just as much progress, and you can make just as much progress going slow and steady. And that's how I've kind of created this class to be a much slower and steadier approach to digestive issues. So just a little bit of overview of what I'm going to cover tonight. Basically, what I'm going to do when I was thinking of what to do for this preview class is I'm just going to really go through the first half of the first night's class, which is going to start next Wednesday night at 8 o'clock at this time. And I just realized that the first class material is really just a good kind of preview and a good kind of introduction into what this class is about. So that's going to be about, I'm going to go through, it's going to take about a half hour, and then after that, you can ask as many questions as you want. I'll stay on as long as you guys want, and I'm sure you guys will have a lot of questions. And so in the meantime, as I go through the material, if questions pop up, just kind of write them down on a piece of paper. But I do want to ask you guys if you could just kind of hold off on the questions until I get through the material. So on that note, let's kind of jump in here. And I'm going to kind of take myself off my webcam and just go right into the PowerPoint material. I hope you guys are watching on your computer. If you're listening on the phone, it's okay. You can still get a good sense of what the material is going to be about. So, all right, I'm going to click off my webcam, and all right, so let's kind of dig in. So this is our class preview tonight, and I think this is a good quote to get started, and that's "all diseases begin in the gut," very famous quote by Hippocrates. So we've known for a very long time that digestive issues, good digestion is the root of good health, and poor digestion is the root of poor health. When I'm working with folks, it's really rare that I find anyone with digestive issues without other kind of health problems. And sometimes they don't put two and two together and connect those problems, but almost always there's a strong connection. So whether it's weight gain or fatigue or even things like asthma and skin issues or immune problems, there's very frequently a connection to other health problems. So if you sign up for this class and you go through this program, there's a good chance that if you have other health issues, there's a good chance they're going to greatly improve as well. So week one, which starts next week, and again, this is going to be almost exactly how I go through it next week as well. So is a 4-part kind of class, and we're going to go through parts 1 through 3 here tonight. So again, you'll get a pretty good thorough introduction and idea of kind of what the class is about. And we're going to start with how digestion works, and I just kind of want to go through the digestive system for you so you can understand really how digestion is supposed to work, and then you can understand, we're going to go through it again, and I'm going to show you how easy it is for things go wrong, why things go wrong, and then why these traditional foods, which we're going to work with on the program, why they work and what they are and how they're just so different than the modern foods that most of us are eating today, including a lot of kind of health foods that kind of really aren't health foods. They just kind of masquerade as health foods. So let's start with part 1, how digestion works. And again, I'm going to keep this really simple. We're not going to get real complicated here or go into like organic chemistry or anything like that. But I do want to just go through it kind of briefly. And I like to talk about digestion through some simple analogies to explain it. And I think the most important thing to understand to start is that digestion is a north to south process. That's probably the most important thing, overriding concept of digestion. And it's important to understand that because everything that happens up north affects what happens down south. Digestion kind of flows like a river. So what happens up north in our stomach is going to affect what happens further south in our intestines. So the analogies I like to use to describe digestive tract, basically what we can divide digestion into 3 phases. Our upper GI, which is essentially our stomach, and the analogy I like to make is that its stomach is akin to a blender. Our middle GI, which is this kind of coiled tube in here, so our stomach's right up here. This is our liver off to the left, which is really off to the right in our body, but in the picture it's off to the left. It's our stomach. The middle GI is our small intestine, this kind of brown coiled tube that kind of sits in the middle of our gut. And the analogy I like to make there is that it's like a sponge. And again, I'm going to explain yeast in just a minute. And our lower GI is our large intestine, and that's this kind of bluish tube here that kind of sends up, transverses over, comes down, and that analogy I like to make there is that it's like a rainforest. So let me just explain a little bit more about those analogies. So when we're looking at our stomach, I like the analogy like it's like a blender, and the primary role of our stomach is really to break down our food. And what breaks down our food is hydrochloric acid. And that is, we have millions of hydrochloric acid producing cells in our lining of our stomach that really kind of like drives the speed of the blender. And the key point is that that blender speed needs to be on high in order to digest our food. The HCl, hydrochloric acid, also disinfects our food, kills any parasites, bacteria, viruses. We have other enzymes in there, part of the digestive juice of the stomach. Pepsin breaks down proteins. And really when that food leaves the stomach, it's like the consistency of a pea soup. Sounds gross, but that's kind of how thoroughly the stomach will digest our food through the enzymes and the hydrochloric acid. When it leaves the stomach, we have some additional support from the gallbladder. If I go back to this picture here, our gallbladder is a little sac that sits below our liver, and it produces bile, and the bile kind of helps break down our fats. Our pancreas is kind of yellow tube here. Endocrine gland in the middle, it has a lot of roles, but it's also a digestive gland, and it produces digestive enzymes that also help to digest our food. So they kind of work together, our stomach, pancreas, gallbladder, and by the time things leave the stomach and hit the upper part of the small intestine, things are very, very thoroughly digested. And that sets the stage for the next part of digestion, and that's the middle GI, our small intestine. And the analogy I like to make is like a sponge. So the primary role in our small intestine is absorption. And of course that happens efficiently when the stomach does its job well and breaks down our food. Now if you were to look at our small intestine with the naked eye, look at it, it'll look like a hollow tube. But when you look at it with a microscope, the lining of the wall, we have these what are called these intestinal villi, these finger-like projections right here that increase the surface area for better absorption. And if you were to actually take your small intestine out of your gut and lay it flat and unfold all the villi and lay them flat, it would cover the surface area of a tennis court. That's how tightly compacted all those villi are in our gut. And again, the purpose is to increase nutrient absorption, the surface area for nutrient absorption. And let's see, right, so, and basically, that's the kind of, so when you look at that lining, it's like a sponge. So like when like when you put like water through a sponge, it goes through the sponge, but nothing else can get through. That's kind of like the lining of our small intestine. So when things are broken down properly in the stomach, when our nutrients are broken down into the component parts, so like proteins into amino acids, fats into fatty acids, carbohydrates into simple sugars, they easily kind of move through that lining. And anything that's not supposed to get through that lining kind of keeps moving through, like fiber, other materials, other waste materials that kind of move food through the intestines and then into the large intestine. So our last kind of phase of digestion, our large intestine, the analogy I like to make is it's like a rainforest. And that analogy is because if we look at the rainforest of planet Earth that sits along the equator, they are the most fertile regions on the planet, and they play vital roles. That diversity, great diversity of life, plays vital roles in keeping the rest of the planet healthy. And the same kind of idea in our large intestine is that this is the most fertile region in our body. It's teeming with trillions upon trillions of bacteria. It sounds kind of creepy and gross, but we have 3 to 4 pounds of bacteria that live in our large intestine. They live everywhere in our body, in our digestive system, in our stomach, in our small intestine. They live outside us on our skin, in the pores of our body, but they're heavily concentrated in our large intestine, and we cannot live without them. And the primary role is symbiosis, meaning they have to be in balance with each other to function properly. So when we look at those trillions of bacteria, there's 10 times more of them in our large intestine than we have cells in our body, which is pretty amazing. And this is a whole new frontier of science. We're learning all new things about what the roles these bacteria play in keeping us healthy. But what we know is that about 80 to 85% of them are beneficial, and about 15 to 20% of them are pathogenic. Now, under normal conditions, when we're healthy, when our gut ecosystem, inner ecosystem is healthy, those pathogenic bacteria, they just kind of hang out and they don't cause problems. And some of the roles of these gut bacteria that they play all sorts of roles. They take the waste material and they manufacture B vitamins, vitamin K. They keep the bowel wall healthy. You can just kind of see some of the roles they play. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We're learning all sorts of things of what they do. So that's kind of a little bit of an overview of how digestion is supposed to work. Stomach breaks down food so that it can be properly absorbed through the lining of the small intestine. Things that don't get through, shouldn't get through, don't, and go into the large intestine and are converted by the bacteria that live there, and whatever left over or whatever waste material is there, we poop out. So that's very basic, but for our purposes, good enough description of how digestion is supposed to work. Now let's see what happens when things go wrong, and then we'll kind of get into how traditional foods are really going to help reset things back to where things are healthy and thriving and in balance. So it's very easy in our modern day life and world for things to go wrong in our digestive tract. And let's just start in the upper GI. So much can cause upper GI malfunction. And really, to kind of summarize it, it's really when the blender slows down. That blender should be on high. And when that blender speed is on high, when that acid in our stomach is being produced properly, we digest things thoroughly. However, it's very easy for the speed of that blender to slow down. And when that happens, it's like that blender speed goes from high to medium, and in some people it's almost turned completely off. Well, when you look at the environment of the stomach, it's a very warm, moist environment. It's a lot hotter inside than it is outside at room temperature. And when food doesn't digest well, when that hydrochloric acid isn't produced well, food just it's like that blender speed slowing down. Food just kind of sits in our stomach, and we get bloating and bad breath and belching, and we get all these symptoms of just heaviness and stomach pains. We want to skip meals. All these things happen to me. I experienced all of these things when I was having my digestive issues, and they're very common in people. And what happens with heartburn and GERD is contrary to popular belief. So what we're told with heartburn and GERD is that too much acid, it's caused by too much acid, right? Because we feel a burning in our esophagus. That's where acid reflux is back into our esophagus, and our stomach lining has a nice kind of mucosal layer so we don't feel the acid, whereas our esophagus doesn't. So if a little gets into our esophagus, it burns that lining, and that's what heartburn is. GERD is gastroesophageal reflux disease, and that's chronic heartburn when it continually gets into that esophagus and starts to scar the lining, and that's a bit more serious than heartburn. Very, very common today, these issues. But the underlying issue is not that there's too much acid, because again, we need that acid to digest our food. The underlying dynamic is that there's really not enough acid, that blender speed slows down. So what happens is food sits in our stomach, and in that warm, moist environment, it makes us feel bloated, and it kind of ferments in our stomach. And this is often because of this typical standard American diet that so many people eat, which is way too heavy in carbohydrates and simple sugars, that can ferment in the stomach. And they expand, they give off gases, and when a little bit of that food can potentially get back into the esophagus with that stomach acid, it burns that lining. So this is very common today, and it's almost always because that blender speed slows down. We can get gastritis, which is an inflammation in the lining or it is inflammation in the stomach lining. And of course, this also sets the stage for further intestinal problems down south when we're not digesting food. It's kind of, undigested food now is going to start assaulting our lower intestines when our stomach is not doing its job properly. So a lot of forces can cause our blender speed to slow down, not just diet, but chronic stress, the overuse of medications. Certainly like heartburn medications are a big problem. They kind of quell the acidity in our stomach on purpose, and they work, and they take away the burning in our esophagus, but they don't solve, not only do they not solve the underlying issue, they exacerbate it. And that's why people who take Tums and Rolaids and Prilosec and all these Nexium, Prevacid, all these heartburn meds, they become dependent on them. As soon as they stop taking them, the heartburn comes back. So in this program, we're going to work on the underlying issue here so we can permanently stop that sort of thing. So that's a little bit of what goes wrong in the upper GI. Let's move into the lower or the middle GI. And what happens in the middle GI, of course, now food doesn't get digested properly, right? And now what happens is that spongy lining, those intestinal microvilli, can really get compromised, and that gut wall can get compromised, and things can start to kind of leak through that wall in inappropriate sizes. And this is something called leaky gut. And what happens is this sets the stage for all sorts of problems, in particular food sensitivities. So when we look at our immune system, we have about 70 to 80% of our immune system located right in the lining of our gut wall. And it's there like a fortress to deal with any bacteria or viruses that might get through into our bloodstream. And so it's on high alert all the time. And if things start to get through that shouldn't, there's an immune reaction. And now we get these food sensitivities. And people come to me all the time with these food panels, food allergy or sensitivity panels, and you know they're sensitive to 20, 30 different things, and they're kind of freaking out and like, oh my God, you know, like not just like odd, like typical things today like gluten and dairy, but like simple things like lettuce and carrots and you know, things that should easily be digested. And that's always a sign of a compromised gut wall. And we can turn that around through traditional foods without a doubt. So if you have a lot of food sensitivities, this program can help kind of resolve a lot of those food sensitivities. SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and that's almost always connected to IBS, which stands for irritable bowel syndrome, and that's an overgrowth of the bad bacteria that live in our gut that can cause bloating, that can cause fermentation of simple sugars and a lot of carbohydrates in our diet, and cause those symptoms of bloating and pain and irregular bowel movements. It can manifest as inflammation in various ways, ileitis, inflammation of the ileum, colitis, Crohn's disease are all inflammatory issues. And of course, autoimmune issues often have their root cause, their root issue in our compromised gut wall when that spongy lining gets leaky. So lots of problems manifest in our middle GI. And a lot of this, of course, is now also not only just our upper GI not doing its job properly, but just our modern diet is just becoming so toxic and so problematic that we're just eating foods that historically we've never eaten before. And they're not prepared the way that people used to prepare them. I'm going to talk about that. And they're really just assaulting our digestive system. And our modern foods that we're eating are just so changed and so different from the foods people used to eat that our body's just having a hard time recognizing them, digesting them, and it's causing all sorts of these food sensitivities and kind of gut issues. So let's kind of go on to the lower GI. So now, of course, all this undigested food and all these toxic modern-day foods now start to compromise the bacteria, those trillions of gut bacteria that live in our large intestine as well. And this is when that rainforest loses its diversity, just like the rainforest on Earth. As we start to cut it down and clear cut it, we know it's causing potential to wreak havoc with our weather patterns on planet Earth, and the integrity of that rainforest becomes compromised. And the same thing happens in our large intestine. The integrity of those gut bacteria get compromised. So we have an overgrowth of the pathogenic bacteria. So our modern diet is feeding, in a way, these pathogenic bacteria and causing them to overgrow. And so this is where we get chronic yeast and fungal infections. Candida is a type of yeast that's very common to overgrow in women. All sorts of problems, excess gas, inflammation, constipation can happen in our lower GI as well. So we can get colitis, diverticulitis, ulcerative colitis, again, constipation. And so many, digestive problems from north to south, whether it's the stomach or the small intestine, the large intestine, can manifest from so many reasons. And again, what can damage gut bacteria? Well, again, the sugar, processed foods that we eat, also overconsumption of alcohol, many medications. Many of you are probably familiar with antibiotics that, we're really overusing antibiotics, and many people will stay on them for months. And while sometimes they're important and necessary to kill an infection, antibiotics don't discriminate. They kill a lot of the good bacteria as well, and they set the stage for a lot of bacterial imbalances. Steroids and birth control are known to do it. Of course, we're all stressed out of our mind these days, right? This modern life is so stressful, and that can cause shifts in these gut bacteria. So many environmental chemicals, not only in our food, but in our household cleaning products, and just so many, chemicals and pollution can shift those gut bacteria as well. So how do we fix this? How do we kind of really turn the digestive environment around? And what we're going to do on this program is, and the answer really is traditional foods. And some of you might be nodding your head and thinking, well, that sounds good. But I really want you guys to understand what I mean by traditional foods, and so you can understand what we're going to do on this program. So I want to give you a little overview of what I mean by traditional foods, so we can be clear on just how different the foods we're eating today are from the foods we really want to look to start bringing into our life in this program. Because you really can't get these traditional foods. Very hard to find these foods in conventional supermarkets and even many restaurants. So what are traditional foods? The best way, I always like to tell the story of Weston Price, so you can really understand. I think it puts into context, what traditional foods really are. And he was a dentist, and he lived from 1870 to 1948, and he was like many dentists of his time. He came along at a time when our food system was really starting to dramatically change. We were moving more and more away from small scale kind of agriculture, family farms, community agriculture, into more of the industrial system that pretty much predominates today. And he and many dentists at the time were seeing tremendous rise in dental problems, especially in kids. They were seeing more and more cavities, more and more tooth decay, more and more tooth crowding, and all of the kind of dental problems that we just kind of take for granted today. That we all just kind of, we just, it's just part of life. We just go to the dentist, and 10, 20, 30 dentists in every town, and but they were the first group that were really seeing dramatic shifts in the dental presentations of their patients. And Dr. Price felt at the time, he really felt it was because of the changing diet in America, that we were becoming more industrialized. So what he did is, in the 1930s, after he retired, he spent 10 years traveling around the planet and seeking out the most isolated cultures he could find that were completely untouched by civilization and that were 100% on their native diet. And he went to all ends of the earth. It was just an amazing expeditions he went on, especially back in the day when these cultures were not as accessible as they are today. And he went everywhere. He started out in the Alps and kind of some very remote villages in the Swiss Alps. He went to the Hebrides Islands off the Scottish coast, studied the Maori of New Zealand, Aboriginals of Australia, South American Indians, North American Indians, African tribes. He studied dozens and dozens of these native populations, these native people, and he was looking at their diet, and he was looking at how it affected their dental health and their overall health. So he wrote a book kind of summarizing his findings, which you can find on Amazon today. It's called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. And I just want to go through, summarize a little bit of the key points of what he found. And then we'll tie that into the foods that he found they were eating and how we can kind of incorporate those into our life today and how we're going to do that in the program. So the first thing he found, which was totally fascinating, is that these people had no need of modern dentistry. They didn't have dentists. They didn't need to have their cavities. There was very low rate of dental decay. He found a little bit, but very, very little. They didn't have to have braces. Their teeth came in straight. It's almost crazy for us to think that. It sounds like a fairy tale, because we're so used to just modern dentistry. As kids, we just go to the dentist, we get our cavities filled, you get your braces, you have your root canals when you got to get them, you got to get your wisdom teeth pulled, and he didn't see any evidence, he didn't see anyone needing any of these common modern kind of dental practices today. Second thing he found was that there was no incidence of chronic disease, including chronic digestive issues. It's not that they never got sick or died or anything, but they didn't have these health epidemics that we have today. They didn't have type 2 diabetes and the rates of heart disease and cancer that we have today. And there was certainly he didn't find any, GERD or IBS or ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, and the dozens of digestive issues that afflict, almost 50% of Americans have some form now of digestive issue. We didn't find these problems. So number 3, he found that their diets were higher in nutrients. So he actually took samples of all these diets. He sent them back to the U.S. for lab analysis, and he found universally that they were higher in nutrients. He found that they were 10 times on average higher in fat-soluble vitamins, which are vitamins A, D, E, and K, which so many of us are deficient in today. He found they were about 4 times higher in minerals. And these folks, they knew how to preserve the integrity of their soil, of their animals, the nutrients in their soil and in their animals, be it in their animals' flesh, the eggs or milk. Generation after generation, they knew how to promote animal agriculture in a way that was healthy for the animals, healthy for them. They knew how to grow crops in ways that, again, kept the nutrients in the soil for generation after generation, and they practiced things like crop rotation and crop diversification, and these were just passed down traditional agricultural practices that they learned and knew that were very sacred to them and that they made them healthy. And of course, in the industrial world, we've kind of moved away from these agricultural practices, and we now have these kind of large-scale agricultural kind of practices that kind of predominate our food system. And we know that these practices today, whether it's monoculture or factory farming, really depletes the nutrients in both the animals and soil. And I promise you, the companies that stock supermarket shelves, they have no interest in your health. The bottom line is profit, and when food becomes about profit, it loses its nutritional integrity. And we've really lost the traditional methods of food preparation that these cultures really understood that not only kept them healthy, but also promotes good digestive health. All of these cultures were doing things to their food that enhanced their digestibility. And we're going to learn about those things on this program. And there's simple things we can do in our own lives that we can mimic these things and do the same things that can bring back good gut health for us. So the 4th thing he's found was that health declined when adopting modern diets. So many parts of these cultures did move to the towns, and we're starting to get connected to the developing road systems, and we're starting to eat what he called the foods of commerce. And he found that the longer they had been on industrialized foods, the more problems, evidence of health problems they had, and the more evidence of tooth decay and other health problems he saw, the more they were eating what he called, again, the foods of commerce. These last 2 things are, I think, the most important thing to understand. So number 5 is that he found a great variety in traditional diets. He couldn't say, everyone should eat this way, which is what, we're told by our government and doctors. Everyone should eat according to this food pyramid, heavy in grains and lots of, kind of limit the fats, limit the saturated fats, watch the cholesterol, and, kind of this kind of, blanket statements about health and nutrition that, he never couldn't find these standardized kind of nutritional ideas that kind of depended where on the planet these people lived, and of course dictated what they ate. So obviously people in the Arctic Circle were eating dramatically differently than people along cultures along the equator. However, here's the key point. The key point is number 6 here, the last one, and I'm almost ready to open it up for questions. We're almost done here. The key point is that despite on the surface there being obviously different diets, underneath the surface there were these universal principles he found in these traditional diets. Universal principles in what these cultures were doing to their food and how they were preparing their food to make them healthy for them. And that's what we're going to do on this program. And in particular, I like to summarize these, I like to simplify it, and I've come up with what I call the 5 pillars of traditional foods. And these really hold the key to restoring our digestive health. And we're going to go through these pillars week by week And I'm going to make you really clear on what the difference is between what these traditional foods are compared to the modern versions that we're eating. So for example, after week 1, and we go through kind of give you some, general kind of ideas for kind of what you want to start to eat, and I'm going to give you a lot of meal ideas and recipes, and we're going to talk through, we're not going to do this on this call, but in the first class we're going to talk through, exactly where you want to kind of start, the foods you want to start getting out of your diet, the foods you want to start bringing into your diet. After week 1 of kind of getting you going with some basic changes, we're going to kind of get into these 5 pillars. So week 2, we get right into pillar number 1. One of the most important pillars was healthy fats. None of the cultures Dr. Price found ever consumed a low-fat diet. None of them. There was no such thing as, they didn't consume skim milk, they didn't consume low-fat yogurt, there was no low-fat anything. These cultures really valued fats, and they prepared them in ways that we don't do anymore. And I'm going to clear up a lot of confusion in that week 2 about concerns about, gaining weight with fat and cholesterol. Those are modern-day myths, and I want you all to feel really confident and comfortable with kind of what these real traditional fats are, and how to start incorporating them in your life, where to find them in supermarkets, how do you start to bring them into certain different recipes. Good, healthy fats are so important for digestive health. They help slow down our digestion, satiate us in a good way that keeps us away from craving their very kind of sugary, highly processed foods that many of us have a hard time getting away from. Week 3, which is the second pillar, is properly prepared grains. So it's hardly anybody consumes properly prepared grains anymore. And the cultures that were using grains, not all of them were, but those that were, raising wheat and corn and rice, were very careful with what they were doing to those grains. They had very certain things they were doing, like soaking and sprouting and fermenting grains in ways that made them more digestible. We don't do this anymore. And in particular, whole grains can be very difficult on our digestive tract. They can cause a lot of inflammation and feed a lot of those gut bacteria imbalances. And most people in America anyway are eating tons of grain-based diets, which is often a huge problem. So week 3 and 4 also we're going to talk a little bit about food sensitivities. Grains and dairy are the 2 big ones in America. There's certainly a lot more than that, and I'm going to kind of show you how to identify food sensitivities. And but we're going to work a lot with grains and dairy because those are the 2 big ones. I'm going to show you the difference again, week 4 also with dairy, the difference between the modern day dairy that most of us are consuming and the properly prepared dairy that all cultures who were using dairy, whether it was cow's milk, goat's milk, sheep milk, what they were doing with that dairy was very important and promoted good digestive health. Some of you in these weeks 3 and 4, I'm going to encourage to do elimination diets to help heal your digestive tract and encourage you to go on a grain-free diet. Some of you I'm not. It kind of just depends on a lot of different kind of factors. Same with dairy. But though that week 3 and 4 are really kind of about identifying food sensitivities and working on some elimination diets. Again, those are temporary elimination diets. They rarely have to be permanent. And as our gut health starts to improve, as we take things out down the line, we can bring those foods back in. But again, we're going to be looking to the traditional preparations of those foods that can promote good digestive health and sort of kind of tear it down. Week 4, bone stocks, so important. You can't even get bone stocks in supermarkets anymore. It's canned soups, canned stocks, bouillon cubes. These things are just digestive nightmares. We're going to learn how to make bone stocks, which are so simple, and they're so wonderful for our digestive health. They have so many gut healing nutrients, and I'm going to show you videos and give you recipes for how to use these stocks, and can really go a long way to help bring balance back to our digestive system. And the last pillar, fermented foods. These are probably some of the easiest things we can get in stores. There are good fermented foods, but a lot of people don't even know what they are, and there's a lot of poor quality fermented foods, or people just aren't eating enough of them today. And we need fermented foods to help restore that good balance of good bacteria and bad bacteria in our gut. And we need all traditional cultures, all of them, had liberal amounts of fermented foods in their diet. So that's just a little bit of an overview. Again, week 7, we're going to go into the gut-brain connection, which is really important, and kind of go through all the factors kind of that can damage our mental health as well. And there's an intricate, amazing connection between our gut health and our mental health. And so I'm going to spend a week on that, and the last week I'm going to kind of go through bringing, if we've taken foods out of our diet in week 3 and 4, how to kind of bring those foods back in, and how to kind of set you up for success, long-term success, how to make this program practical over the long term. And so that's a little bit, I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to open it up for questions here. Now, I'm sure there's lots of questions. Now, just one more thing I just want to mention real quick is I want to give you guys, for those of you who are interested in the program, I want to give you just a little bit of an incentive to sign up. I know sometimes we want to think about things, and in the process of thinking about it, we forget about it, right? And so I don't want you to forget about it. And if you feel like this is the right program for you, and you feel like you will get benefit out of this program, I'm going to give you just a little bit of a discount for sitting through the class tonight and participating tonight. So you can write this down. If you forget, just email me. But if you sign up before tomorrow night, when you go to the homepage to sign up, it's fearlessdigestion.com, and you click the sign up button, enter coupon code preview20. That's PREVIEW 20, the number 20, in the discount area, and that'll give you $20 off the cost of the program. So that's going to expire tomorrow night, though. So again, just a little bit of incentive to take advantage of this course, and I'm really excited to teach this course. I've never seen anyone not dramatically improve their digestive health if they really apply these principles. Really, it's not rocket science. And every week I'm going to give you handouts. I'm going to give you recipes. I'm going to have a Facebook group where we can connect through the week, connect with other class members, and troubleshoot together and kind of share, recipes we're all making. It's going to be a place for us to ask questions, kind of get to know each other. So you're going to get a lot of support, a lot of material in the class. And, I hope you sign up. So let me go back to my webcam and unmute everybody. And you can start asking questions. So actually, instead of unmuting everybody, because there's often a lot of background noise, let me see here. Bring my webcam back. Where is it? People can see you. Where's my webcam? Not showing up on my screen. I don't know if you guys can see it. Let me try this again. Show my webcam. Don't know why it's not showing up on my screen. Well, here's the deal. So, in your panel on the upper right, you can just type in a question, or you can kind of click the little hand icon and kind of raise your hand, and I'll unmute you, and you can ask a question. So, that makes sense? Does you guys all see that kind of, hopefully that panel up there? So if you guys have questions, fire away. Go ahead. This is the chance to kind of see if this is the right fit for you. I definitely, want people in the class who feel like this is going to be a good fit for them. Saying nobody has a question, really? Gotta be some questions. Okay. Amber, I've unmuted you. Can you hear me?
Hi, Craig.
Hi, Amber.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Yep. So go ahead.
Hey, in May, but I was wondering, is class online equivalent to what we would talk about in person?
Can you repeat that? You kind of broke up a little bit. I didn't quite hear the question.
Oh, sorry. Let me turn my volume up.
I can hear you okay. You just kind of broke up a little there. I can hear you okay. You just kind
Oh, I made an appointment to come see you in May, but I was wondering if your class online is kind of mirror what we would talk about in person.
It definitely would. It definitely would.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually think that you could probably get more out of the class. I can hear my echo in the background, so I'm sorry if I'm interrupting you. It's kind of a little bit of a time delay. But no, I actually think you'd probably get more out of the class, than actually working. I mean, it depends. You can email me and we can kind of like talk about it. But you know, it's 8 weeks, so it's a lot of, and you get the support of the group, and there's a lot I kind of go through in this 8 weeks. So it's a little bit more comprehensive. Whereas if we work together privately, yeah, we could still accomplish some things, and we could, you know, be more specific to maybe your issue. But it wouldn't be quite as much of an education as I think the class is going to be.
Okay, I think it's kind of kismet that I found you, because everything that you described is what I'm going through. And then ironically, I had just purchased on Amazon the Nourished Kitchen cookbook.
Oh yeah,
and
okay.
It like is a traditional foods lifestyle, unbeknownst to me that is what, like, the direction that you went in. So I was like, whoa, this is meant to be.
Meant to be.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. So I look forward to having you in the class.
All right.
Okay. Anyone else have a question? Again, you can type it in the question pane if you want. Oh, I see there is a question here. Sorry if I missed that. Of course, now it's kind of hidden. Let me kind of let me see. It's oh, there was a bunch of questions. I'm sorry if I missed some of these, folks. Sorry if I can't see a lot. Another reason I did this practice webinar was for me too, so I can get used to this forum. Which foods with fiber feed the correct bacteria to manufacture? Okay, so kind of these technical questions, you know what, really want to, those will be answered kind of in the class. Again, don't want to, you know, kind of get bogged down in like really kind of nutritional questions. I want you guys to kind of ask questions about, you know, the program itself. So let's see, how does this program help with Candida? It definitely helps with Candida, because we're going to, you know, what feeds Candida is often the very kind of modern foods and kind of high carb, kind of sugary foods that we're going to be really working on restricting in this program, without a doubt. So, you know, we're going to start week 1 right away. The most important thing, really, what we're going to start with is the first 2 weeks is going to be kind of the we're going to work on the dietary changes I'm going to introduce in week 1 are going to be constant through week 2. And what we're going to start with is really kind of working together on the basics. And the basics is really getting away from sugar, processed foods, and a lot of those things are definite feeders of things like Candida. And then we go a step further in week 3 and 4 where we start to identify food sensitivities together, which can certainly feed Candida as well. So yes, this program is definitely a good fit for Candida. Another question, is this the right fit for Crohn's disease? Definitely, this can help with Crohn's disease, no question about it. Now, you know, what I tell people in this program is some of you are going to be able to, you know, I think really kind of reverse your digestive issues completely, and some of you, you know, it's going to be you know, more of a long-term process. You know, if you've had Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis or even GERD for 20, 30 years, it's probably going to take a little longer than 8 weeks, and that's okay. You know, what I'm giving you in this class is an education and tools to bring these foods into your diet well beyond the 8 weeks, so that we can establish really good habits together so that they become a regular part of our routine and our diet. So over the long term, we can reduce the flare-ups from Crohn's or from ulcerative colitis. Some people have complete remissions from those things. Some people, they'll just be able to manage them better or stop. You know, Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, those are intestinal bowel diseases, and I've never seen anyone with those diseases who wasn't eating a very kind of high grain standard American diet. So we're going to really work in this class to kind of work through that together. Another question: will your next class start after this one? Do you have that scheduled? I don't have it scheduled yet. I don't know. I don't know when. I will run in the class again, but I don't have a specific time yet. Is it possible to follow this diet if you are traveling and have to eat at a restaurant, or does all the food need to be homemade? Certainly, it's going to be more challenging when you're traveling. There's no doubt. No, not all of the food has to be homemade. This is not the GAPS diet. This is not the SCD diet, for those of you who know about it. Those diets are great, but what I've tried to do in this program is to go a lot softer and gentler, because in my experience, so many people struggle. It's just impossible for many people, especially if you have a job that requires you to travel, or you have kids, or you're taking care of an older parent. There's so many obstacles to doing those diets, and they're great, but what I'm taking a much different approach, which is you can go a lot slower and make progress. So yes, it's definitely difficult to when you're traveling and eating out, but there's better choices you can make. There's no question about it. You can avoid eating poor quality, really poor quality foods. You can make better choices. So we're definitely going to kind of cover that. Have you had consistent results, improvement in severe eczema, especially in young children? Yes, definitely. If there's a digestive component, there often is a digestive component with eczema. No question about it. I use a digestive healing protocol with people with eczema, which is going to be kind of somewhat, we're going to kind of definitely cover aspects of that in this class, without a doubt. So yes, if I can't make one of the Wednesday classes, is there a way I can listen to the webinar, receive the support materials after the fact? Yes, I'm glad you asked that question. I guess that's from Barry. Yes, so I forgot to mention that, so thank you for bringing that up. Yes, all the classes are going to be recorded, and you're going to get access to those recordings the next day. So if you have to miss a class, you can catch up, whenever you need be. So yeah, emergencies happen. You can't make a class, or you're traveling. You have to miss a week or two. You can definitely catch up with the recordings for sure. Let me keep going here. I think that was the last question in the question box anyway. Anyone else want to chime in? Do we have any? I don't see anyone with their hands raised. I'm looking. No one else? Feel free to chime in. This is the one chance to ask questions. I don't know why my webcam's not working. Can you guys see my webcam? I'm clicking on it. It says it's not showing up on my computer. I don't know why. I don't know where it is. I'm going to type, can you see my webcam? You guys can just kind of type in that box in the panel on the upper right. Those of you who are on your computer anyway. There's a few questions I might have missed. Has this program been recorded? I got on late. I am recording it. I don't know if I'm going to upload it or not. I might put it on the home page. I might just kind of put it on a blog post. I'll see, but I am recording it. So there was one question. I mean, I apologize, Jason, I hope I didn't sound a little obnoxious or or short when you asked for that question. I didn't want to answer, but I'm happy to answer it. Which foods with fiber feed the correct bacteria to manufacture B and K vitamins? Well, pretty much good quality foods, basically. So we want to get there's different types of fiber in foods. There's insoluble, soluble fiber. Both will feed kind of good bacteria. We'll kind of go through that in the class. It's not really that important for tonight, but What's important to know is that kind of the typical, sugary, highly processed foods that most of us are eating are feeding the poor bacteria that kind of compromises our body's ability to, or good bacteria to kind of do their job properly. So this is kind of a quick answer to that. So that's it. I'm not seeing any more questions. So it's just about an hour, so I think there's 12 of you still in here. You're still here. So any more questions? If not, feel free to jump off. Maybe you already have and it's just still running. So okay, we'll end there. If anyone has a question, feel free to email me. My email is craig@pvnutritionaltherapy.com, and you can kind of contact me through my website. I have a bunch of different websites out there. You can contact me right through the fearlessdigestion.com site. There's a place where you can kind of contact me through there if you forget the email address. You can contact me through my blog, which is fearlesseating.net. So I don't see any more questions, and I guess, okay, here's one more question. Are the foods you recommend consuming easy to prepare, and can you purchase them locally? Some you can, some you can't. And so, that's what we're going to do every week. I'm going to definitely give you guys resources to find the foods that you can purchase in your local health food stores, and certainly there's going to be foods you can purchase. Some of them are going to be a little bit more challenging, and I'm going to give you recipes for how to make them at home. Bone stocks would probably be a really good example. There's actually a few places now online where you can purchase bone stocks, but it's really rewarding and simple to make them at home. It's so simple, and I'm going to show you how to do it. And when you make them at home, I'm going to show you how to bring them into recipes, and just kind of make it practical and easy. Are there foods absolutely restricted? No. However, I'm certainly going to encourage most class members to do elimination diet with certain foods. It's particularly grains. Now, that can be very challenging for people, so not everybody's going to be able to do that, but some people will be able to restrict gluten, which is found in certain types of grains like wheat. That can be very inflammatory to the gut lining. So I'm going to encourage a lot of people to kind of experiment with that, because if these foods are causing problems, it can be very helpful to kind of take them out for a while and allow the digestive system to kind of reset a bit. And then down the line, and this is going to be different for everybody, it could be a month, it could be a lot longer than that. It kind of just depends on the degree of the problem you're dealing with. Obviously a little mild heartburn is going to be a lot different than 30 years of ulcerative colitis. So I'll give you some kind of guidelines for how long to take certain foods out, and your symptoms are going to guide you too. We're going to learn how to bring foods back into the diet at a certain time, and you can kind of gauge whether or not that food will be helpful or not. So a lot of times our symptoms will tell us. People will take certain foods out of their diet for a while, and they'll bring them back in, and oh boy, they bring them back in, and there's that chronic bloating again. There's that intestinal pain. That means you're probably not ready to bring it back in. Or it's just going to be, there are some foods that are just, very problematic, and you do want to look to kind of, maybe even permanently keep them out. So a lot of times your symptoms will tell you. I think I'm not seeing anything else. Okay, same question there. I think I answered. I think that's everyone. So there was a bunch of yeses here. That means I'm assuming some of you, I guess I asked about the webcam. Can you guys, let me just ask that again. Can you guys type, for those of you who are still on, can you see me on the webcam? I can't see me on the webcam. It's kind of annoying that I can't, my own webcam isn't showing up. Yes, okay, so good. All right. I don't know why I can't see it. There's usually a little pop-up screen. It's really frustrating to me that I can't. I like to see what other people are seeing. Well, good. I'm glad you're seeing it. Okay. No other questions? Last chance. Last chance. Okay, everyone. So that's, we're right about an hour. Again, thank you all for jumping in, and I hope I answered some questions, and I hope you got a clear idea of how the class is going to run, and I hope some of you sign up, and I'm really looking forward to teaching the class and kind of getting to know some of you, and it'll be fun to connect on the Facebook group and kind of get to know each other a bit. So I'm really looking forward to the class, and I think I'll end there. And again, if you have any further questions, feel free to kind of email me privately. That's something you didn't want to share publicly. So I think I'll end there. And again, thanks everyone, and have a great night. Okay.